Helen Slinger is a documentary filmmaker and master storyteller whose latest work is called The Gangster Next Door. One of the tragic stories in the film is about the senseless killing of Christopher Mohan, a young man who was an innocent victim in the Surrey 6 slayings in 2007. On that fateful day, Eileen Mohan's life was changed forever.
Left the family's apartment on the way to his regular Friday night basketball game, Chris Mohan had been literally dragged into the death scene across the hall. One of two victims who had nothing to do with the drug trade, killed to ensure their silence.
And we're like, wow, two innocent people have just been killed. That changed the story and the way the media covered the story. It was no longer a situation where people involved are getting killed, it's bad, uses up police resources, but gee, most of us are fine. Suddenly it was like, wow, anybody can get killed in this deadly conflict, and that is scary.
And it is my pleasure to welcome Helen Slinger and Eileen Mohan to Studio 4 to talk about this some more. Unfortunately, we have to keep talking about this. Firstly, to you, Eileen, thank you so much for doing the work you're doing as a anti-gang advocate.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry about your son.
It's most unfortunate what happened to us.
What interested you in the story, in the gang story?
I think what's most interesting about any story is always the human beings involved. And Eileen, of course, we knew about Eileen because she had decided to become really the public face of this horrible thing that can touch anybody's lives. But she interested me, the people that were involved in the gangs interested me, because what you know is with the news, you're getting the news. You're getting the horror stories of Chris's death. You're getting the random killings, random violence on the street. What you're not getting is, I guess, the whys and the whos, and that's what really interested me, is to try and get a little bit below the headlines.
Yes, who are these young men, these crooks, these thieves, these killers, these cowards? Who are they, and how are they raised, and where do they come from? And that was shocking.
Very much shocking, because I mean, being a normal family, you raise your child according to your principles and belief. And you know, Christopher was a great guy, and he, you know, when he grew up, it was almost like a sense of pride that, excuse me, that you raised this wonderful guy, and it's almost like, you know, your shoulders are free. You have this wing on your wings, and you have nothing to worry about. And so much so, because when he grew up, I put myself back into school, is because there's no one to look after at home. So, you know, when this happened to Christopher, I couldn't find sense into it all, that why would this happen? And especially the person who lived next door to us. We had just moved 1 month ahead to the 15th floor from the 14th floor because our apartment got sold. And this guy across the hall seemed very decent, very nice. He even used to say good morning to me. Yet, he was a drug dealer, and he used that apartment as a dial-a-dope home. And
you had no idea?
No idea at all. That I was putting myself and my family in harm's way, yet he was, now I brand him as a coward. Instead of operating from his parents' home and putting his loved ones in danger, he came to live among innocent people and shielding himself against his rivals, thinking that his rivals would not come and kill him where he's staying. He shielded himself against us and among us, and eventually he was killed, and alongside he took my son's innocent life.
Yes, and he was putting you in harm's way.
Yes.
And as you know, Ed Schellenberg, another innocent victim who was working in that apartment on that day. What I found interesting was how long it took you to find out whether or not your son was a victim.
Well, you know, came home on Friday. We weren't allowed to get into the even into the doorway of the lobby. It's just because, we couldn't go in. There's a gas leak. And luckily, I have my sister who lived like 5 minutes away from me. So we went to her house and came back 10 o'clock and then thought, okay, we were then allowed into the lobby. And the first thing they asked us was, what floor do you live? And I said, 15. Oh, you can't go up. Why? Oh, it's locked up. So, okay, it's 10 o'clock. I said, well, they had this registry going, everybody going in and going out. So I said, can I have a look at that registry? And they said, why? I said, because I'm waiting for my son to come home from basketball. Oh, that registry is handwritten. You can't, it's not computerized, so it will take us long to find out. How old is your son? And I said, 22. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and he said, oh, it was about 10:30. Oh, don't worry, he'll be home. He must be having a good time with his friends. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, by 10:30, Christopher's home, and if he isn't home, he gives me a call. But he hasn't called me, and I need to know whether he's been here. So they told me to go away, come back, and we will look after. If Christopher comes, then we'll let him know where you are. So it was, came next day. Nobody knows where Christopher is, and by then I started getting phone calls from his friends saying he didn't turn up to the basketball game. And that was the first time in 7 years that Christopher didn't turn up to his basketball game. I was pretty awed because the next day he was supposed to go to a funeral for a friend of his who died from brain aneurysm. So everybody was going to Balbinder's place because all his friends were grouping up, and now all his friends are thinking, where's Christopher? Because they lost the game, and everybody's looking for him. We don't know where he is. And then come Saturday, we go back to the apartment, and by then I called the property manager, and I said, I was on the phone with Christopher, and I heard you people come into my apartment to check for the fireplace. So what happened after?
Ed was a fireplace repairman.
Yes. Ed.
So, yeah, and no, Ed went to the 1505, and another person came into our apartment. Yes, there was two fire service technicians there.
Okay.
So the one who went into our apartment and was with Christopher, he missed death by 15 minutes. Incredible. He finished everything, he left, and then Christopher, normally when our fireplace gets clean, we open the back doors and all the windows so the first fume goes out. So when the police went into our apartment, the back door was open, all the windows were open, but he left the house the way we asked him to.
And do we know any more about how Christopher was killed?
We do. This is, as you know, this is before the courts, so I think Eileen and I are both being very careful about what we say about how Christopher was killed because there's all sorts of
publication
bans.
ban.
Yes, I thought so. Anybody in jail at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were 6 victims, and there are 6 people in jail. 2 of them are, one of them is an unindicted co-conspirator, Anton, Big Anton.
Yes.
He has the tattoos, and the Anton Uday Smear Singh is an unindicted co-conspirator.
Okay, but the police have linked it to Red Scorpions, to the gang, or not necessarily, or is that up for grabs?
Kim Boland, who's done such brilliant work on this story.
Yes, reporter Kim Boland, great reporter.
Yes, Vancouver Sun reporter Kim Boland did write a story quite early on linking the Red Scorpions to the Surrey Six.
Tell me about the common denominator that runs through these gangs. I won't call them new gangs, they've been around. The United Nations, the Red Scorpions. Who are these people?
To me, one of the most interesting things is that these people are not necessarily who you expect them to be. They're not the marginalized youth entirely. I mean, certainly the gangs would haul in marginalized youth, but they're a lot of very middle-class kids. As you may recall, you were speaking of the Red Scorpions, the Bacon parents, she was middle management at a credit union. He was a teacher's aide in the school. Yeah. So they came up as valley kids who I think thought they could make a little bit of money running dope, it being not such a bad thing to do in British Columbia, to sell a little bit of marijuana. We've been pretty relaxed about that. And they just kept going, and they became, a bunch of high school kids who were doing a little bit illegal to
And was it Jamie who was the wrestler? One of them was a wrestler and a
Jamie was a provincial champion at his
provincial champion. So looking like he's on the road to success. Instead, he's on the road to drugs and grow-ups and all it entails. Is it about greed? What's it about really at the middle class level? I know there are fringe kids who grew up in tough homes who find family in gangs and find some kind of father figure in a gang. But what is it about the middle class kids?
What can you make that much money at so fast? I think Eileen and I absolutely agree it's about greed. I think it may be also about how much we have allowed gangster life to be glamorized. I think that's changing a bit, and I don't know if that's optimism on my part or not, but I think that is changing a bit.
No, I talked to Patricia Graham about it from the Vancouver Sun, and she agreed that to put a gangster on the front page of the paper in an Armani suit and trendy glasses and with a Ferrari beside him is not a good image, and it's not the right image.
Yes, there's a shot at the very beginning of the documentary of one of the Bacons walking out of court, and that's what it is. It's a good-looking young man dressed in, I don't know if it's an Armani suit, I don't know my suits that well, but dressed in a very sharp suit with a sharp haircut and the, classic, some kind of expensive glasses. And to me, it looks a little bit goofy and very menacing, but I'm sure to some people it looks...
Right, and to some young women it's enticing, and there's money and there's power. And all of that. And it's
love and romance will take you a long way off track.
Unfortunately. Helen Slinger and Eileen Mohan, our guests. We'll come back and talk more.